But yeah, it's amazing. I write a letter to Governor DeWine, their office calls me back the next day.
Wow.
I was on the bus and they called me back and I just said, what kind of service work do I need to do for the city of North Canton to help get a new skate park here? And I told them about the idea of getting the YMCA to do it, and, you know, skate park membership would help, you know, keep the park around for, 50+ years and renovations, and the private security guards so nobody vandalizes it again, and,
Just real busy right now.
so I'm waiting for Ethan down there to call me back, 'cause I was on the bus and went to voicemail, so. But yeah, this, mortgage company, I'm trying to complete the successor of interest, and I sent them the, certificate of transfer and the quitclaim deed. The certificate of transfer is the same thing as the deed in the state of Ohio, and their underwriters are giving me a hard time, so I gotta call Dan's paralegal Carol tomorrow and see what we do, and if they're just gonna, at this point, I'm like, just sue the underwriters if they keep, cause I don't know what other, I can't make any other deed that's transferred from my dad's estate into my name with the quitclaim. I just made myself a grantor and the grantee. Next is to get the allodial title, but,
No, that's what I went to college for.
it's the last thing I have to cross off the list with, things to do with the house besides the renovations.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
I can understand that.
Here I am now.
I got the property tax bill in my name and not my dad's estate. I just need to get the mortgage in my name and not my dad's estate anymore.
Down in Steubenville.
So you're driving in Steubenville?
Yeah, the mortgage on auto bill pay, so that's the easy part. It's just getting the verbatim, not saying the state of Michael Mulkey and Joseph Mulkey.
Yeah. It was horrible till I sold it.
Yeah, it's like on the happy state to buy it.
I don't know, Dan did most of the work the past 4 years, and he just sent me a certificate of transfer and I sent it to the mortgage company, so.
I was young and dumb.
Well, I had worked when I was in graduate school. I worked for a guy who was General Rental franchise. It's now it was out of the Wales Road. And he bought this package. I'll be honest with you. It's good. It was too not necessary.
You clip out newspapers,
Yeah.
magazines, everything.
Oh, really?
Then I had to order 85%.
Of the Tesco.
So much more of Monday than I thought it was going to be.
They were higher, they were
I
higher price.
got back to my office at
We did
2:30,
but
then spent the next hour and a half grading.
10 years.
So then at like
But you make
3:45,
sound like a teacher. It's not too bad. You just did.
How many people took it?
didn't make enough. I mean, we had
6
when I
people
started
took
off,
3 tests.
people that we had.
So
All the properties on that side.
there were 8 total papers to grade.
We started on the mall, inside the mall, which was good.
It just became my day.
Then,
As my email to you indicates, I was scrambling to do things for the night at the end of the day.
And then, things got good.
I had experienced something with Raptors. It's because my password is in
Inside the Sears store.
So I'm hoping that you as our resident tech guy can tell me. So I can, like say this, I can pull up the cover page, but I click on an attachment and it says update password. So I go over here
Not all.
and use the password.
So
It's very
And
so,
so it appears to let me in. So that would tell me if my password gets me in by time.
Did you change the password today?
Nope, I haven't changed the password at all.
I mean, mine made me fix my password today, but it shouldn't. Like, that would be quite the coincidence if both of our passwords
You
expired.
stayed on.
Right.
Well, this was, as I was going through, trying to work on it yesterday. But again, I mean, it's letting me in the online version, although I don't know if we could. Never thought I'd pull into meetings here this day. I'm amazed that they sell them over. Although I've never done, I've only ever done it on Apple. But I mean, I'm in. So is it?
Yeah, dashboard.
Tune them, yeah, but you
And then
need
click
a
on
good
the
fish,
first.
so
Well,
I
I moved on once from
the
that.
guy
Click on
over
like
at,
the second one for tonight.
both, Sam's Club sells them. It's pretty
Green.
Oh, see, I've never gone.
But I think
Yes,
CJ's
okay.
has a place.
The former owner.
Costco has a place.
Okay.
Something you don't wanna lose.
John, Jim.
That's weird, so it's just with the app.
Okay.
Would you like me to leave my iPad? Really weird, I think it
Well,
I'm sorry.
because of your iPad.
Oh, okay.
It's granted it's cloud-based, right?
Okay.
It's
Oh,
not the iPad's fault.
Ah.
Police report? John, I don't know. You should call your wife and make sure we do.
It's not the iPad.
It's crazy.
You need
Does
to
it have
know.
the access permissions that wrong on that doc? Is it just that document or any?
You know what, I tried, I feel like I tried a couple of them.
Put your fingers in the wound. Yeah, there's not much blood. Right. It doesn't look fun. It looks fun to me. Like, clean?
Yeah,
That's terrible. Jeez.
Oh, so that one works. Oh,
on
it's
stage.
It's just that first
On his
meeting.
arms.
May, oh, so you know, because I gave up at that
Scratched
point, I just
him
went
like
off my
3 or
regular
4
times.
times.
You know,
But like,
the email that you sent out.
I'm gonna guess something got corrupted about that first meeting.
my wife
Okay.
left work
And
to
that
go
I
get
would-
him.
I would need to republish it, but it's not
In the
really
car, he
Yeah,
was
no
still
problem.
crying in the back.
No problem.
Yeah, it was okay.
Because I prefer to go into the meetings and I pull up the items individually. Daryl says, oh, look at 87, page 87 of the packet. I don't know what page 87 is.
But that is something that I can bring up with them, because we are currently negotiating the contract for our renewal. Well, you know, we really love to renew, but one of our meetings got corrupted in your software, and I'd really like an explanation of why that happened.
Have you,
Sounds
buy
reasonable.
that house, I'm sure they
I walked by there today, and I looked at it, and I said, holy smokes.
doing a lot.
They had a dumpster.
Cannot answer that question.
Whole lots
Yeah.
cleared on it.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, they put some windows and doors in there.
Yeah, they was that, I think that's down the road. And then I still would go down, I would take it down to the inside.
Do they?
Yeah, they were in
But you know, that house was plastered.
Yes. A lot of the homes have plaster there, so. Yeah, you don't even recognize it.
No. I know.
And because the house behind it has a real nice, it's a nice yard. Yeah.
No, we did not.
And what they're, the work that they did on the park is good there too. That's nice.
This piece right here. We only come up to Maple.
Have things improved since we talked earlier?
I mean, I'm less nauseous, but I'm still.
Less nauseous, learning how to deal with that depth perception?
Oh, yeah,
Bag right over between his legs.
What?
He's got a bag
Yeah.
between his legs.
Really?
No.
Oh,
Well, he does.
He does, but he won't admit it.
yeah.
In a drawer. I'm just kidding.
Was that from, like, they didn't have to knock you out for the surgery?
No, I wish they would have. But
Well, because that's like, poor Haley, she was, she had a reaction to the anesthesia.
Oh, yeah.
So,
By Wednesday.
she was very, very
Tomorrow,
nauseous.
Wednesday,
Mine's
because
just
I'm
like,
gonna be going out of
it's
town
just,
for-
I mean, when they laser it, they usually really high, intense laser, and it basically hits your brain. I mean, it's going through your eye.
Yeah,
So,
Hmm.
just,
no fun.
but it's the swelling, like, I
Would
mean,
2 o'clock be all right?
it looks 1,000 times better, but it's very red and
You
it
wanna
still
meet up there, or do
bleeds,
you
like
wanna
it'll
meet
bleed
someplace else?
for 5.
I'd come
5 to
over and
6
meet you.
days. So,
Wow.
Thank you, sir.
So we're firm, 2 o'clock
Yes,
Wednesday?
I'm putting it in
At your
right
office?
now. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Jim Pilgrim.
Jim.
Good evening. Right? Evening, Shannon.
You know, could do this a lot faster if you remember the ads.
I know, could be.
It ain't fun. We'd have a stove situation, a stove dining situation. That's North Homestead. Yeah, wherever. We want the storage right, because it could be several years.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Last case activity was when they got their warning letter.
So far.
First one was on the 17th of May.
Hello.
How's it going?
8,000 a day. Looks like they did something. Yeah, they were at 9,000. Now they fixed something. Now they fixed something more. So they're slowly chipping away.
Yeah, we're chipping away.
That's interesting. Are you Christine?
Great guesses.
Yeah?
Everyone go to the library? I'm sorry?
That's my guess.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
I think I admired out in Delaware.
The chamber was gonna try and have an airport meeting tonight. Everybody just loves Monday apparently.
Oh.
Still got canceled.
Oh,
It's so much cool retail.
Really?
Yeah, but it's, and they're not completed yet. So they're starting to fill more in. It's pretty cool. They, I've,
Really?
do you?
It's a nice place.
Who are you looking for?
Lives all over.
This.
It good?
Yeah,
Plugged? The one in,
will be.
Real life? I don't necessarily like Canton.
Oh.
Every year I was one of the state back in '06. You know, I grew all around some portage. Yeah, I know. Counties, they used to keep a chance of everything. And fortunately,
How's it going?
just did it. So you just don't see stuff.
I told him you would come tomorrow.
I got in time this afternoon, and I packed a shower and said, I'm gonna come see what's happening.
You guys drove back?
But we stopped in down here, and went to Mayberry.
Alright. I've been there too.
Had to.
Got to.
It's so cute. Oh, come on the ground.
The, in the end, so,
It's warm in here.
stuff is.
I was just gonna say.
We went down for a wedding. Supposed to fly back. but I canceled the flight.
Yeah, 503.
Any chances that these windows are junk?
Cleveland, they said it was storm.
Hi.
Hi.
No voicemails.
And so,
Yeah, it's probably.
I would
she
bet
got the
you
last
a lot
flight.
of
A
money,
lot
I get
of
so
money.
much crap calls.
given that I've attempted to open it
Okay.
before.
Have you
I
ever?
think they,
But it actually canceled.
There's a
so-
crank over there.
Calls.
Yeah.
For somebody
Oh,
with
like-
more upper body strength, they need to break
I
the
bet,
Listen, you can
and
always
every
open
day
the
Or
window
breakouts.
once.
I get
You can always open a window.
Like
5 scam calls, and half of them are from Google, from Google listings and all that stuff. It's crazy. Take me off your list. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Then someone, then just give somebody and say, call this guy.
I mean,
Yeah.
throw something else through the window first, and then.
No, it's not happening.
What else do we get? People trying to ask about our electric bill.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Are you gonna be in the parade, extra story?
I think I'm going to.
You could build a pirate ship float.
Yes. I could. I could.
I don't know. Are you gonna be in the parade?
Me?
Yeah.
July 4th?
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on it. Why were you?
I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
It says no politicians.
Yeah, no politicians.
I was gonna be behind a horse.
Oh, are you?
Perfect spot.
And they might take you.
How about you, Jay?
Yeah, I was not politicians. My red truck's not gonna be available to put in the parade this year. It's got brake issues and I have not had time to address
Oh,
it.
no.
Do you have a private?
And so if we build an amenity.
If the Heritage Society
Yeah, fine.
does it, I might.
How about you, Christine?
Like a Christmas truck?
Yeah,
Hello.
Summit's Christmas ads.
Well, that's cool.
Hello, setting up the Winter Fest for like hellos? I don't have to answer that right now.
When would that be? When would you take it out?
Is that gonna fall apart?
It's not. Yeah. What do all cars work?
I don't know.
They're next door.
There's a rental in the ballroom.
Oh.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. What are they renting for?
I do not remember what their rent was.
Are they serving food?
Between the meetings, right?
Is it open to the public?
You know? Look at you with your poor eye. Gosh, that's so.
I just had laser surgery. You ready then?
I am.
Guys ready? Okay, and now call to order the public hearing of June 26, 2023. The time is 6:45 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Wyrick?
Here.
Member McLeaster?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Shroyer?
Here.
Member Volt? Here. Member Orr?
Here.
7 present.
Okay. At this time, we will begin the public comment portion of the public hearing. First is ordinance 30-2023. Ben, would you please read the title for the record?
An ordinance amending chapter 1136 Main Street Districts, specifically section 1136.05 Schedule of Uses, item multi-unit dwelling of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton to permit multi-unit dwellings on ground floors when a property does not have frontage on Main Street or another important road in the city as designated by council.
All right, Daryl.
As the short title indicated, we're looking at a way to create a more robust off-street presence in the Main Street districts. These are areas where businesses may not be, given their proximity to residential properties, be particularly practical. And it gives us a little additional flexibility as well.
Okay. At this time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of ordinance 30-2023? Okay. At this time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition of ordinance 30-2023?
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast North Canton, Ohio. I just have one concern here. What's the driving force for this? And I bring this up in regards to the CIC's recent acquisition of properties on West Bakeville. This is pushing right into the heart of residential properties. And I don't know if the goal here is to establish business. This is right behind DeHoff. The CIC, I guess, spent in excess of $600,000 acquiring these properties. And I'd like to know if this proposal is to enhance or further plans for that area. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Go ahead, any comments?
I would, I've had some phone calls from some other residents on this, and it can seem to be a bit confusing, but really, it's effort not directed at any specific properties, but really just on a general belief that we are trying to limit the spread of business into the neighborhoods. We recognize that some of the off streets, we'll just say Backville as an example, although I don't think that's one. But what we don't want, or what we're trying to prevent, is from the requirement that, like on Main Street, you have to have ground floor commercial with residential above, and we don't want that to spread down necessarily these side streets and create that business impact in the residential area. So what we're trying to say is that it can be all residential in those areas.
As long as it doesn't front on Main Street. Makes sense. Okay. Final opportunity for anyone wishing to discuss this. Okay. This item will appear on tonight's council agenda. Okay. Moving on, Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 32, 2023?
An ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 1153 off-street parking of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton.
Okay, Darryl.
As we've discussed, we are going to move from, in our commercial areas, from fixing a mandatory minimum for parking to the developer's discretion. But it is not unlimited discretion. It still must move through an approval process as specified in the codified ordinances. We believe that this offers the best opportunity to maximize development, commercial activity, tax generating activity on parcels that have an inordinate amount of asphalt that is never used. It's not being driven by any specific request. It is actually being moved by observation of 4 or 5 large shopping areas in town in which the asphalt seldom, if ever, sees a car. And if there's any traffic over that asphalt, it's when they're plowing snow. That's it. So the question is, can we convert this unused space that was arbitrarily and mandatorily required for parking, can we convert it to something else that generates revenue? And for a landlocked community, utilizing that asset is, in some quarters, I think, both desirable and should be a priority. Mr. Diorio, fair summary?
Fair summary.
All right. At this time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of ordinance 32-2023? At this time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition of
Matt,
ordinance?
I think, is he walking up?
In favor?
I'm Joseph Moakley, and I live at 1016 Park Avenue Northeast, and just an idea, maybe some of these abandoned parking lots could be converted into the next new skate park that hopefully maybe the YMCA could run, and we could, create a skate park membership that would create tax revenue, and with the skate park membership, it would help cover private security costs so the new skate park doesn't ever get vandalized again. And I don't know, it sounds like a good idea for businesses, because like Daryl said, what's the point of having asphalt somewhere if it's not being used? So I think it's a good thing for the city. Thank you.
Can you spell your last name for me, please?
Mulqueen.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I am adamantly opposed to these changes. Allowing a business to determine their own parking needs, granted, they're going to, in their mind, create adequate parking for their needs. What happens when the next business comes along and they need to sell the property? And it's been designed, maybe constructed with a structure, and the new business, there was never any future plans for the needed parking for their needs. Once you cement this and create a limitations on future resale of that property because their business ideas didn't pan out, you're limiting the saleability of that property because the parking needs weren't ever designed for flexibility for the next buyer. So allowing that to take place is a wrong idea. I see you're still shooting for this 9 feet by 18 foot parking stalls, which Mr. Matheny spoke out against. I hope he still feels that way. As I said, the city engineer, or no, the chairman of planning commission years ago, and Mr. McLeister provided the name for me several weeks back. I don't recall the name at the moment, but that is not adequate parking. I have a recently purchased car, and I'm struggling for room at home to park it. I'm having to expand the parking stall. Otherwise, when I swing out, my tires fall off the pavement and start creating a mess in my yard. I think Mr. Matheny said he has a pickup truck that's, what did you say, 21 feet long? It is no fun trying to get out of your car, especially if you have packages, and crack your door so you can just try to squeeze out. So that's a no-go for me. The driving aisles, 12 feet, totally inadequate. You're going to have people bumping into other cars. Parking for employees within 400 feet. That's not adequate. And then let them arrange for parking half a block away. Again, that is a no-go. Allowing these agreements with another property owner to use overflow parking. And then we get to off-street waiting spaces for drive-through facilities. And I just happened to come across an article just in the last day, and I'm going to leave you handouts of publications talking about this. This is in the case of communities across the country are eliminating drive-throughs some of the quotes. Drive-throughs don't support any of the life and vitality and amenities that suggest people might want to come and live, work, or play in a neighborhood. Drive-throughs also do not support neighboring businesses, which on a weekly basis, Mr. Stroya encourages people to buy local. People generally just grab their food and drive off. And then the article talks about pedestrian safety. We need to make sure we can design communities around pedestrian safety. And then they're taking examples of Salt Lake City. It goes against the master plan of Sugar House to promote a walkable mixed-use town center. Anyway, I'm going to leave these two articles. I'll have one for Mr. Diorio and one for Mr. Stroya to share. And Mr. Revolt has gone on and on and on about the Acme parking lot. You need to keep in mind that parking lot probably serves 35 businesses. And to try and build somewhere on that parking lot, whatever you build there, is going to have parking needs of its own. So jumping all over Acme or any other area in town that you think we should cram more activity, I don't think it's being thought through fully. I wasn't around when that whole shopping area was planned and developed, but that's what you got. And there are, I haven't gone up there and personally counted them. Normally I would do because I don't open my mouth unless I have my facts. But there are a lot of businesses there. That cheeseburger place that went into the old Wendy's, that should not have been built there. You have no ingress and egress, and I don't think it's going to be successful, but we'll let it play out. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address and to speak in opposition? Any other comments?
Well, I would, respectfully disagree in parts of what Mr. Osborne has addressed, just in handling the economic development for the city for the last 5 years. The challenge that we have really is that the buildings are too small in the footprint that they have because they're required to have so much parking. Now, these are buildings that are already up. They've been up for who knows how long, decades. And the development and the opportunity for economic growth are limited by that building and the footprint that it has. Yes, there certainly would be instances of business not being able to move in and take over another location because the way it's laid out, maybe the parking gets changed and they feel there's too few spaces. But there's really more of the other. There's too few businesses coming here because the parcels are too small because there's too much parking requirements. There is a point, though, that I think you tried to address it, that we're going to rely upon, to some extent, the expertise of the businesses in determining what their parking needs are. But we do have recommendations that we make in the code. They're recommended minimums, and certainly they will run the rigor of analysis from the engineering department and from the administration, the building department, to address how the impact is for that. But some of these things, as far as like the drive-throughs, in certain parts of town, it isn't going to make sense to have a drive-through. We recognize that. But I take, for example, two properties that were blighted for years, probably a decade. the site of Shale Coffee, which was George's Foreign Car, and the site of Tremont Coffee, which was hair salon, before that a gas station, I believe, or convenience store of some kind. And but for these opportunities to come there and the drive-through to be a part of that, they would still be undeveloped. Now, yes, a lot of people go through a drive-through and they're going to grab that coffee on their way to work, and maybe that doesn't result in them spending any time in our community. Maybe they're from Summit County and they're driving in to work in North Canton, but they stop and get that coffee there. Maybe they don't, but to the extent that they're involved in the community, doesn't really depend upon them getting that coffee. But there is the possibility, we have to concede, that by going there and having a pleasant experience and seeing people sitting outside, dining, doing their various social engagements and interactions, surfing the web or whatever business people conduct or studies they conduct, they might view that as, you know what, hey, that's a cool place to go. I think I might do there sometime when I have my time off. But the bottom line is that whether they're just passing through or whether they come back and stay, they are providing, economic revenue to that business that employs people, that pays taxes. And the bottom line is that as we look out, over the next 50 years, and we see that the cost to provide governmental services continues to go up, that's just a fact of life. There's no way to wave a magic wand and make that go away. We know that that's going to occur. We know that there are more things asked of us that we have to do. It's about growing the tax base. And if I can squeeze an extra business on a parcel that doesn't have a lot of need for the parking spaces, that's great. It's ultimately up to them, and we might keep in mind that Acme itself petitioned the Planning Commission not that many years ago to build a Domino's Pizza in the outlot there. So I think we all understand that they recognize that there are opportunities for that. And as far as businesses come and go, the Charlie's place is a former Wendy's. So it's been there a very, very, very long time. And we'll see if somebody offers a good product that's received well in the community, they'll do fine there. But if it isn't because necessarily it's a bad location. It could just be that maybe their product or service they are offering isn't really what the community's looking for. So I just really wanted us to try to keep our focus on that. Keeping the footprint as small as possible for parking, I think, gives us a better shot at recruiting some other businesses in. And ultimately, perhaps, if the building that they're looking to occupy is not conducive to new business, they're going to tear it down. But if the parking requirements are the same as what they were, they're just going to build another building on the same footprint that they already have, and that isn't going to be the one that gets the business in. It needs to be a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may also add, many of the provisions that were brought up, such as drive-throughs or sharing parking spaces with other buildings, they're included in the ordinance because their numbering will change, but there is no regulatory change proposed, and they've been in the code since it was adopted in 2003.
Good point.
This notion, and I come back to Mr. Durios, and I don't want to be too redundant, but I was struck today by a piece, I believe, that was carried on Good Morning America this morning regarding the explosive growth in carry-out dining. That the average Midwestern family spends $3,500 a year on carry-out. In DC, it's over $6,000. The point is that this is, or can be, a vital part of a community's economic development strategy. Many of us have heard about vacant facilities on Main Street. Within the last 24 months, 2 that were vacant, long vacant, were occupied because we permitted a carry-out or a drive-through. I think it's important that we remember that our costs go up at least 3% a year. That's just our labor contracts. So we need to be in the hunt for revenue. And if I draw your attention back to our 10 economic development goals when we look at a project. And the first 2 are capital investment and job count. Those are absolutely critical for our economic future. And why do we say economic future? Because again, we have to pay for police, fire, EMS, road paving. We know what the road paving situation is. We've reached a critical point. The other night, we approved an ordinance or moved some money for, I think, a radio, if I have my recollection, about $18,000. I think it was, worth about 30 jobs. So that person who's got their first job at McDonald's is absolutely critical to our well-being and our quality of life. Moreover, I would submit, and we'll hear a little bit later, but some of the challenges this community is going to face in the future will find homegrown solutions and homegrown financing. And what the community cannot do is put its head in the sand and pretend that economic development isn't important. Patrick's point, what we want to encourage, and which we have seen the benefits at Kmart, is redevelopment. That's what we're after. Tear it down and build something bigger, better, and newer, and more expensive. That helps the schools, lightens the load here on our residents in the city. Finally, let me also say one more thing. While I appreciate the input, one of the great, Mr. Duryea, I'm going to go back to our graduate school days at the University of Akron. All of us took a class called Historic Methods. And one of the first things we were taught was to look at the author. Is the author credible? How is he reviewed by his peers in the historic profession? I have before me, thanks to Mr. Osborne, this wonderful piece called Drive-Thrus Are Creating Problems for Cities and Towns. Unfortunately, it was written by CNN, which in my view has very little credibility as a news organization known for its research. Let the facts fall where they may, but do your research. And unfortunately, Mr. Meyerson, as I've read this quickly, has failed to do so. He's cherry-picked the idea and frankly has not put it in any context, which frankly good historians do when they write. So should journalists. It's a novel thought. So, while I appreciate it, I must tell you that I find it wanting. That's it.
I have a couple thoughts. Kind of landlocked city such as North Canton, I would think, first this doesn't force the hand, it makes somebody develop an outlot. It just gives the opportunity, which, how does that not increase the potential value to the next buyer? That alone, for me, makes it worth it. But another point, I think, at first I kind of got hung up on parking spaces and everything, but 12 feet, we haven't made that smaller. The requirement hasn't gotten smaller. Some cars have gotten bigger, but some have also gotten smaller as well. So I don't see an answer of increasing the width of parking spaces to be a viable solution. So those are just my thoughts.
To that point, I may not be the normal when it comes to parking. I park clear down on the other end of the parking lot to space my vehicle away. It's just the car guy and me coming out. So a narrower parking space just means I can walk a little further. That doesn't bother me. I would still be concerned about 18 feet and a 12-foot in between that. 2 18 trucks, assuming they go all the way to the front, are gonna stick out 3 feet. Now you got a 6-foot aisle if they back up to each other. So as the planning commission and those that review these plans look at that, I think they need to take into consideration whether or not those trucks can pull up to the tires when they pull in, and there's an overhang when they back in or pull in, so that they're not sticking 3 feet out. And that just goes all into the plan review. I think overall, we need to find ways to make North Canton, business friendly, allow them to put in, the developers to put in what they need, allow the business owners to choose what they feel is necessary for parking spaces for their customers and their employees, because that's gonna lead to the success of their business. No customers, no business, and they need to make that decision. But I challenge those reviewing the plans to make sure that the property is set up so that that 18 feet, 3 feet of that's not in the drive area. And that can be done easily at the plan review time.
There's several places though that don't have enough parking. All right? You take, for example, the 2 coffee shops. All right? The Shale, there are signs posted in other businesses with Logan's, please do not park, here. And they supplied them, which is a nice effort by that business, but there's not enough parking there. You have Roses, they say no parking over there till 11 o'clock, and then, but they get busy. And same with Tremont. You can take a look at where the North Canton Cleaners is. There's Logan's, there's the Yon Shop. Sometimes it is crowded, but for the most part it isn't. But then you take a look at McDonald's on Main. At one time, McDonald's was busier than heck. Now hardly anyone goes inside. They've confused things with a kiosk. They have more than enough parking and then some. There's, and then you take a look at where Pavs, North Canton Alterations, and what else is there? There's a donut, a cookie shop, or a donut shop right there. There's not enough parking in that place at all for all 3 businesses to survive. So it's touch and go.
Well, John, that's a good point. But it underscores this strategy to acquire properties, land bank them, and redevelop. So you can put new commercial property on sites where possible and provide sufficient parking. It's doable.
So I'll weigh in, Pavs specifically, because that's one that I vividly remember, and there are 2 examples I'll talk about this evening. So I was on planning commission when that was approved, and the requirements necessitated them having a contract, and I believe it's now all under the same ownership, but it was not at the time, having a contract with the person who owned the old service station for all the parking over there, which was, it was required by our code, so we did it, but it was way overkill. They didn't need that much parking. So I'm in favor of something like this because it takes away that, I guess, over-the-top requirement for parking in my mind. If you look at the case of the Alterations Place, Coffee Shop, M&H Beans, and Pavs, they're open at different times, so there's a little bit of crossover, but for the most part, it's a great use of parking. And yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because it's not exactly as it seemed in the code required literally every single parking spot over there at that gas station as well. And I also want to harken back to what Patrick said about the Domino's that was proposed at Acme. You know, that would have been a great use for that parcel, or that extra parking that is not used. And I think that's exactly what we're voting on here tonight, is the ability for business owners such as Acme, maybe such as the Washington Square folks, maybe even the Marx people in the Marx Plaza, to do creative things like that and use their unused parking spaces. So that's it.
And I think to add to Jamie's point, I mean, the parking was, you know, the amount of parking spaces was based on how many people you can seat.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't distinguish between a place that serves an ice cream cone versus a place that serves a 7-course meal. There's a definite difference between how long you're going to stay there. You know, so in the case with Pavs, you know, people don't stay very long. Grab their cone, get in their car, and they go, for the most part. Some with little kids don't want to get the ice cream all over the car, get the ice cream all over the restaurant. We get that. So I think that's an important differentiator. And, you know, ultimately with Pavs, I remember they were, you know, reading in the paper that they were almost said to heck with it to go.
I was just going to add that.
Yeah.
And you know, there were good points made about, you know, these agreements with adjoining neighbors that, you know, if they're not recorded in deed form, you know, they really don't have a lot of bearing if the ownership changes. And so I think that was part of the reason that we drove Pavs to acquire the property next door, was to deal with that. But they only needed a little bit of extra parking. Well, what do we have now?
Yeah.
So perhaps somebody else could have gone there and put a viable, you know, tax-paying business there with employees, but instead we don't have that. So I mean, it's all about decisions and consequences, and it's trying to look forward down the road when all of us won't be here for whatever reasons, that we set up some possibilities of success. And today's point, flexibility is part of that success. And you know, I can assure you that you know, as long as I'm here, and I hope that I ingrain with my successors, that those things are reviewed at the planning stage, and that's why we bring people in early on. Is where we bring in Bojangles and said, "Okay, show us your plan. You know, we don't really think this works on the parking. Have you considered it, doing it this way?" And go back to the drawing board and all that kind of stuff. And it's addressing those concerns on that. So I appreciate that you mentioned that.
Yes, flexibility and balance.
You're right.
That's exactly right. Move on.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Okay, final opportunity for anyone to weigh in on this. Okay, this item will appear on the council agenda. Okay, Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 38-2023 for the record?
An ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 1107 subdivision regulations of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton.
All right, Ben, I'm going to let you read the summary legislation since you have better hands than me.
So the subdivision regulations as they've been brought before you tonight are really just an intent to try and clarify the process we already follow. Our existing code is a little difficult to read, and the hope is that this clarifies it and makes it easier to read. In addition to that, our engineering department asked for a couple of additional changes to be made. So first is that the developers have to pay for the inspections that the city does of the infrastructure they build that will become public property. So the taxpayers will no longer subsidize those inspections. The second is that the developers must provide a final grading, and basically an as-built grading plan, and that's so that the city can enforce the grading ordinance that you all adopted a couple weeks ago now. And then the administration asked for the change that public open space no longer has to become city property. So Our current code requires that public open space become city property, which means the taxpayers have to pick up responsibility for that once the development's done. Unless the developer gets a variance, as in the case of the sanctuary, they got a variance that the HOA would pick up ownership, not the taxpayers. This would allow, without a variance, an HOA to pick up ownership instead of the taxpayer. Other than that, it really just is clarification.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor of ordinance 38-2023? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of 38-2023? Okay. Any other comments from?
I have a comment. On the, occurring to me as Ben was reading that, I want to make sure we fully understand it. It simplifies the open space requirements to no longer require the creation of what would effectively be a public park, imposing a financial burden on taxpayers. So my question is there still a requirement to create the green space?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it, I would like it to be that I don't want the city to have to take it at all. I want you to, if we require that in the subdivision regs, then you should maintain it. I don't want it as a public park. I don't want this, I don't even want the option to have the property, because it does create a lot of nooks and crannies that people have to go take care of. And I think then we end up making bad decisions. So I'm gonna pick on Miss Waring's ward, long before she was on council, long outside of Darrell, long before any of us were here. But so we have a development that was put in there, and that leftover piece that was green space became, what's the park name? Is it Charlie Strasser? Is that the name?
Strasser Park.
Strasser Park. Okay. Kind of a disservice to Mr. Strasser. But why did they get that space? Because you can't build anything on it. It's a swamp. It's got wetland behind it. And when it rains just a bit, that water spills over into what? The park. What's there? The tennis court. You know how often we have to replace the tennis court? About every 6 years. Because the water eventually breaks through the cracks, it freezes, it does this, it does that, and it seems like we're caught in a perpetual loop of stupidity. Why are we doing this? So I'm not going to do it anymore. We didn't put up the tennis nets last year, didn't put them up this year. Don't really have anybody calling, complaining about they can't play tennis. But it'd be my intent to, working with Stark Soil and Water, as needed, to remove that tennis court and restore the green space there, because there's no other purpose. Now there is a playground up on the hill, outside of that tennis court, and the restroom is up on the hill, outside of that tennis court. But you see what it's required us to do. So whenever you're going to have this, you're going to end up having calls from these new neighborhoods that say, well, we want this space to be a park, and then the pressure mounts, and at some point a council says, yeah, okay, well, we'll make it into a park. And that should not have been a park. It's leftover land that the developer couldn't do anything with. Why should that be a park? It should be our responsibility. A park should be something that's well thought out of, that the director of parks is working on, thinking of where this park would be, what kind of amenities would be in there, not just leftover pieces of land that we accept in and we're going to call that our park system. And so I guess what I'm looking at is, I would hate for somebody to build a new development, but maybe it's, wherever it might be, and then they have a green space and they say, here, city, here's the keys. I know we're not required to, we could keep it ourselves, but we want you to have it.
But maybe on the flip side of that, if the green space that they're providing for their development is a good one and the city would want it to develop it, that would be good, but the city shouldn't have to take them at all. And the developer should know that they have to maintain that park, however they design it and develop it, unless the city and, you know, the administrator of parks can put together a plan. But to say no green space, I don't know if that's good when we put in a development, because you're killing a bunch of green space at that time.
Well, I think it's saying, I'm not saying that there isn't going to be a green space requirement.
Okay.
I'm saying there is a green space requirement, that's what the subdivision regs require. I'm just saying that I don't want it to be an absolute certainty that the city has to take care of it. I would like the city to be in a position to say, no, thank you very much. Or, to your point, you know, maybe we do want it, but I don't want it to be automatic, because ultimately the land that they're gonna let go is just gonna be land that they can't use.
Should be designed at the beginning with the first plat, then the layout, and that decision can be made then and not after the fact or 10 years or when the homeowners association dissolves or what have you. It should be designed whether the city's gonna take it on the front side.
So, as written, it is effectively how you describe Patrick. So, the first vote that any new subdivision goes to is in front of council for council to either approve or deny their open space plan. So, effectively, there is a mechanism for council to say, yes, we will take it, no, we will not take it. And it's the first step in the process.
So when are they submitting that plan?
The preliminary plat. So they submit their preliminary plat. The first vote it goes to is council to say yes or no to the proposed open space.
I mean, are they really gonna have a well thought out park at their first preliminary plat? I would say they wouldn't.
No, it would be, this is the rectangle we plan to keep as open space. Will the city take it, yes or no?
But we don't have any idea what that rectangle looks like.
No.
Unless we actually go out there and look at it.
It could just be drainage, which seems to be the default on developments.
But that might be the reason why council would say no to an open space plan.
But if council were to say no, then there's no recourse for them to come back and say, well, it's yours by default. Is that correct?
Not without a court order.
I think that accomplishes what I was hoping to then.
It's number 16 under the preliminary plat.
Okay.
I see it.
Any other comments? Okay, final opportunity for anyone wanting to address council. Okay, this item will appear on the agenda. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn, take a short break, and then we'll start the city meeting.
I got a question. Something's supposed to happen at the end of this month with the Hoover Company and a chunk of land for the high school and property tax and all that good stuff.
They didn't hit the deadline, did they?
Have you guys talked to
It
Steve
was the end
Cisco?
of June, wasn't it? Or when was it? I thought it was the end of
Steve
June.
It was June 1st.
Say again, June 1st.
June 1st.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
We didn't hit it.
So, what's the plan B? And that's that piece of property. Is that correct?
Trees.
The understanding
I don't buy it.
that
Like,
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know, I didn't read it, but.
this was,
I don't know.
we did a TIF that had two components, okay? We created a TIF first, which we did, and we put a deadline to do certain things
I sent this
to
to
get
you.
to the second part, which was the conditions.
Heavily traveled arterial
Okay.
roads. Of course, I guess you could say Main
They
Street's
didn't
an
hit
arterial road.
the deadline to get us to the second part, so that deal
This is
just
nothing
washed
to
off.
research, it's just a collection of positions
But I
that
thought-
various cities have taken.
The outcome of the deal, if they
I
didn't
may not have
fall through and go for
Okay.
the, then they
So he said
automatically
call on
forfeited the piece of
ASAP. He
property.
got
Well,
an
yeah, it's gone.
Yeah,
The whole thing, all of it,
The
property,
Send them there.
they were supposed to have it tied up, it never got, it never happened.
what about the property tax?
I was on the one on
I happened to see it.
That just, all that went away, that was part of the tip.
That was the tip. Again, we created a tip,
Is that
we
yours?
didn't define the terms, that was to
The
come
guy lives down here, so this is
Okay.
plain.
Yeah.
come after.
Oh, yeah,
He lives
Well,
down
we
here
could
in
have
the
done it
corner,
first,
right?
but the bottom line was,
And so he was calling about the street,
stuff
so I
done.
said, that's what we're gonna take care of.
Right.
He was calling about the sign, I
Yeah.
just
I wanted to
taken care
do
of.
There's no requirement.
Interestingly-
We're moving ahead.
You're talking about the property, Daryl? Are you talking about the property that's gonna go to the schools?
If it's not etched in
They haven't fulfilled the terms of,
Patrick has had, Patrick has been a source of that.
A turnaround.
They never built it.
But the bottom line was, again, this was a two-step dance. They didn't start the music.
so there's no way they can comply by Friday, right?
It's over on June 1.
Oh, is it June 1st? Okay.
It's done.
Yeah.
You know, a whole bunch of things were supposed to happen.
Or he'll be like, you can
We
know, you can
defined
know.
it. If you're gonna get to this next step, you have to do
Yeah.
A, B, and C.
Do we know why they didn't
Oh my
comply?
God, it's funny.
On the record or off.
What can you tell me? What do you feel comfortable, what do you feel more comfortable saying? What do you feel more comfortable saying?
Off.
Okay,
They're incompetent.
yeah.
They can't manage a project.
Is there anything
And
more
they are
specific than
certainly
that?
untruthful.
Do they have so many other projects in their pipeline that they just can't get to it? I mean, they don't have the funds, the resources?
Who knows?
All good questions.
Let's
All
go.
good. Those are questions that they should answer.
And they're not telling you, they're not telling you.
Well, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Their credibility is relatively low.
All right, guys ready?
Thank you.
I now call to order the Committee of the Whole on June 26, 2023. The time is 7:35 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Orr.
Here?
Member Volt.
Here.
Member Stroya.
Here.
Member Warren.
Here.
Member McLeister.
Here.
Member Wyrick.
Here.
And Member Matheny.
Here.
7 present.
All right, let's start off with Community and Economic Development. Daryl?
I'm gonna pass. No.
You're like, no, I'm not.
All right. Ben, you have the map. Okay, here we go. The subject property is the one that is in yellow, proposed RMFA. You may recall we went through an exercise where we removed properties from the redesignated properties that were office building and gave them a like or a similar new zone. This was one that had been zoned office, and it was rezoned. And the property owner has come back to us and expressed a desire to have it RMFA. We had zoned it residential, single family, R50. The lot, I've talked to Patrick, talked to the councilman, talked to our policy analyst. This is an orphan parcel. It's pretty small. We want to be mindful that whatever we do not harm the residential property that's immediately to the north. That would sit above the RMFA. So, if we wish to honor the applicant's request, we can kick it back to the planning commission and let them chew on it a little bit. I discussed at length whether it might be to the property owner's interest to have it zoned GBA, General Business A. Parcel's really too small. You've got an existing RMFA to the north, so it's not inconsistent. You know. So the question before us tonight is, do we want to kick this over to the planning commission? I don't have a problem with moving it from R50 to RMFA, if that's what the property owner wants. We should note for the record that he is current on his rental units, and he is duly registered, and he is current on his tax. So he is in compliance, and is in good standing before us. So in the interest of time, if anybody has anything to add, we'll send it to the planning commission with an RMFA recommendation.
I think it makes sense.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to postpone further consideration of item 3A until conditions set by codified ordinance 1181.06A are met?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to John, ordinance rules.
Okay, this is updating some poor language and stuff. Right now, our legal department handles a lot of the calls and, you know, with this. So what he usually does, or what we want him to do, is pass along to his secretary to handle it if he's already involved in that, such, you know, a manner. And then I believe the mayor and Pat, or the clerk of courts.
At the moment, I am their clerk for the property management board.
Right, so they go to you, but we want them to maybe hand it off to the secretary, or what do we want them to do on this?
So currently, the director of law is listed as a member of the property management board.
Right, we want him to step up.
However, he is also highly involved in issuing the citations that people might be appealing to the property management board. So this would take him off the property management board so that it eliminates that potential conflict of interest.
There's a conflict.
So just like the charter established quasi judicial boards, so ZDOA, Planning Commission, Civil Service, the board itself would no longer have legal counsel. They would just hear the arguments from both sides, legal counsel, and then make a choice.
We don't have to make a motion, do we? No? Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we bring on this to
I can't hear you, John.
I'd like to make a motion to bring that to council on an emergency basis also.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
4B is with the fire department. It hasn't been updated, or when they go to see a copy of the charter, it's 2011, and it needs to be brought up to date. So when someone comes up to them, they can show the current one and go from there. And again, I'd like to, any questions on that? It's just a wording type of thing on that, but we haven't updated this since 2011. So, and this will have to go on emergency too. I want to bring that, so I'd make a motion that we bring this to city council on an emergency basis,
To the council.
to the council agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to utilities, rubbish, Jamie.
All right, well, you guys have the distinct privilege of listening to me for the rest of the meeting on a number of items here, so I apologize.
Take your time, Jamie.
Yeah, so the first item, actually, this is kind of an exciting portion because we're hoping to receive some grants here. So this item 5A, it'd be an ordinance that would be authorizing the mayor to prepare and submit an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for a grant for the Woodrow and Lois water line replacement. And it's worth noting that we are asking for an emergency on this because we have a deadline of September 15th. Want to have everything submitted prior to that. So, Patrick, anything else you'd care to add?
No, as you do through 5A, B, C, D, my comments will be all the same, is that this is simply, an application process. We apply all kinds of, for all kinds of things. We're not always successful in getting grants.
Mm-hmm.
It is a calculated process of, what percent we're willing to kick in, not kick in. Rob, does his best, makes his calculations. So, other than, by title, what the project is, this would Woodrow Lois water line replacement, rather than get into all the details of that project, we may not even do that project if we don't get the grant. So at the time, such time, if the mayor applies for any of these and we get awarded something, at that time, the engineer will present to the council what the project is, what the match is, and the council will have to decide if they want to move forward with the project.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So, with that, I would move that we send item 5A to the council agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, item 5B, much like the one that we just discussed, again, it is an Ohio Public Works Commission grant or a ordinance to have the mayor seek or submit an application for an OPWC grant. This one is for the Arrowhead Water Well project. I think we've discussed that in the past. Again, seeking an emergency as there is a deadline of September 15th. So, any questions, comments?
Exciting.
Yes, sir. All right, with that, I move that we move item 5B to the agenda.
Full
Second.
seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, item 5C. This one is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Stark County Commissioners for the placement of water lines as part of the Everhard Dressler Road project. Again, we're seeking an emergency on this. This agreement, in the agreement, the county will pay 49% of the project up to $200,000. And the county themselves is actually the one who's applying for the OPWC grant on this. So, any other comments? Questions? All right. I would move that we move item 5C to the agenda.
Move all seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We are almost done. Item 5D, and this is another ordinance for have the mayor to seek enter an agreement with the Stark County Commissioners, and this would be for the CDBG, which is the block grants for the Peachtree Neighborhood water line replacement project. Again, this is an emergency. This agreement accepts a $499,950 grant. If I have that correct, right, Patrick?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I move that we move item 5D to the agenda.
Move all seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and lastly, item 5E, and this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor upon Board of Control to approve can't even talk, upon Board of Control approval, say it 5 times fast, to enter into a contract for the cleaning of sludge lagoons at the water treatment plant. Anything to add, Patrick?
I would just note on this one, some of you, most of you here are new on this matter when it was problematic. So I just want to give you a little history. So there was a time when the council and the administration didn't really look at this issue in its full importance. So the sludge is a byproduct of the water that we produce. We have 4, we'll call them lagoons. They're not like on Gilligan's Island. Okay? You wouldn't want to be in these lagoons. And the sludge gets stored in these lagoons, and they fill up. They fill up 1, they move to 2, 2 to 3. You get the idea. And then we're supposed to, come in and get a contract with a group of people that will come in and take this sludge and repurpose it for some other application. And there was a time when council and the administration were only funding for maybe removal of 1 of the sludge lagoons, or 2 of the sludge lagoons. And that became problematic because eventually, in some instances, the company that's supposed to come in and do it is behind schedule, or whatever the issue is, they can't get to it. You understand that when the 4 sludge lagoons fill up, the water has to stop being made. And that should be something that just should gobsmack you, because apparently there were times when people were willing to run that risk. And there were times when we came that close. Too close. So what we propose, since I've been here now, is that we're proposing a contract that takes care of all of it, not just 1 or 2 of it. It takes care of cleaning them all out.
Just makes sense.
Is this an annual contract with them?
Yep, it's not annual, but it'd be like the one we have is like a 2-year contract, and then we had an option to renew, but they didn't want to renew it. That's what we're finding with all of our contracts, because they want to come up, so pricing is much higher, as we saw in the water treatment plant chemical bids, and I suspect would be the same here.
Any need to move down that path of a sludge press?
Well, you're just a youngin' here.
Yes.
And,
We've been there.
We've been down this road
Brad,
before.
yes.
I started it, I guess, with exploring the possibility of creating a sludge press operation, and the entity that was in business to do that at that time was Johnson Controls, and so we started down a path of allowing them to put some ideas together on what it would cost, what the return, if any, on investment would be, how that would look. And as we were going down that road, I'd just say I gained an uncomfortable feeling with the project, and so I terminated it. So I terminated it. But I would think, if that was something viable down the road, if there's another company that is in that kind of work, that's something that we could look at. Yeah. And part of what happened, or I should clarify too, make this clear, part of the reason that it started to get uncomfortable is that Congress changed the incentive package mid-term while we're doing this project. So it was that there was an incentive package to produce these caked pellets, if you will, that could be used agriculturally. They could be more easily used and spread by a multitude of farmers, as opposed to the wet product. And Congress took away those incentives, and that completely changed it overnight, and it became much more economical just to allow the sludge to go out. And I should say, just so you all have the historical perspective, because you'll all be here a lot longer than I have, but this predates my return here. But there was a time when there was a sludge operator who was hauling sludge out, and they weren't draining it first. And they get paid by the ton. So we caught that, and you have to be careful. So just making sure that everything, there's all kinds of pitfalls, of course, in anything you do, but that's just for your edification down the road.
Any other questions or comments on item 5E? All right, with that, I move that we move item 5E to the council agenda.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Revolt moves adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. We'll take a couple minute break, and then we will continue with the regular council meeting.
Next to your pickleball start.
So you're testing till 2:30.
Got 4 paragraphs down.
Did you well?
Pass.
Nice. How are you? Great. Good.
Under that agreement, turn over the land to the school.
Where are you going, Christina?
Where am I going?
You out of here? You're like, I'm done.
I just speed agenda, it's long.
Isn't there another?
How you doing? Do you need anything? It's gonna be a long one.
The roads are nice property.
Okay.
These are high
Are you sure you don't need anything?
There's no tax debate, but the money collected, the money that we paying from.
Okay, good. Okay.
Right, but they wanted to use the money that would be collected.
Because then you wouldn't have to stay.
Right.
That's kind of an abatement. They're taking the tax dollars that we paid on project A,
Oops.
Yeah.
and they want to apply that to project B.
That's good.
We said 3 conditions. That give the parking to the school, tear down those 3 houses, and address the parking lights that you installed at those folks.
Right.
So that was to be done, parking lights were to be done by
New Jersey.
April 1st.
April 1st?
Because we thought that was a quicker fix. And then the parcel,
Where's the parking lot? With these lights?
it's in front of people. It has a.
Hey, Daryl, would you?
They put, there's telephone poles in the parking lot. They put,
It's right by North Main Street, isn't it?
yeah, they put
Starlight, isn't it by Starlight?
But he knows, like,
that like you find driving up and down the street.
Upgraded?
They downgraded by putting these cheap.
Yeah,
equipment
let's-
like that.
So you had to be upgraded back up to.
We are code requirements, which will be the parking similar to what you would find at Acme or any other parking lot.
Why was that?
And then, they had to deed over that parcel that they replatted.
Right.
But they did not deed that over.
So what happens now? That.
Well, that part's
Overwhelmingly,
that's
every age
they're out.
So this is, they get the property?
The school doesn't get the property, but they don't have
Yeah, they have just let so much infiltrate into the upper floor. Because the windows were sealed.
This is before the agreement.
I know that it's
What are they doing today?
where they go.
Rally with promise to
and all that wood.
They're not party.
What? That was their rally? So they're rallying there. Hugh has someone marching. Tom was take him over, and then he puts him to Belarus.
So there is.
that just seems
like the craziest.
They'll be back.
Had that guy going. All those jails. Oh my gosh.
Lights, tear down the houses.
Like I just can't
Oh,
believe.
They did it after, they did it after June first. I mean,
Tear down, demo 3
Oh my gosh.
military.
Yeah.
City decided. And everybody just said,
Okay.
go ahead, what do you need from us? It's what shows you the lack of stability.
Yeah. And so that was trust.
Fear because they're military.
they didn't
Right.
do anything by June first for that.
Right. Robert, we're starting.
All right. Ready, Ben? All right. Now call to order the regular city council meeting of June 26, 2023. The time is 7:58 p.m. Opening prayer.
All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of this community. Thank you. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Ware?
Here.
Member Short?
Here.
Member Volt?
Here.
Member Orr?
Here.
Member McLeister?
Here.
Member Wyrick?
Here.
Member Matheny?
Here.
7 present.
Okay, thank you. Have a motion and a second to approve as presented minutes from June 5th, June 12th, and codification updates to chapters 135 and 719.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, at this time, I invite Patrick, the Director of Administration, to do a special presentation on the digitization, that's a tough word to say, of city services.
Yes, so thank you to council for giving me this opportunity to ramble on. I'm sure that there's some things that are happening that are so important, and they might not have as much curb appeal as some other things that we talk about, but they warrant us to talk about them because, you know, ultimately, you know, when it comes down to it, regardless of what the policy decisions we agree or disagree upon, there needs to be, you know, a backbone to government, the guts of government that make things work. And for so long here, as many will tell you, things were not working. And part of that is that we were in the Stone Age as it related to technology. And, you know, Catherine and I both can attest, you know, it was just unacceptable that if you wanted to call City Hall and you needed to talk to the engineering department, we would have to tell you to hang up and call another number. If you were calling to leave a message, you couldn't leave a voicemail, you'd have to fill out the little while you were out pink note. And it carried over into everything. You know, the record keeping is abysmal, you know, locating stuff, and that's part of what we started with, you know, a company called eFile, which is now morphed into a bigger company called Rubex, to try to create the digital records and keeping them in the manner in which we can find them. So that's critical. So as that has grown, and now with contracting with OpenGov, and this started in the finance department, using OpenGov to show the community, you know, how they can look up stuff about city finances. And talking with the OpenGov representatives, yes, they're in the business to sell you things, and you know, I was not in the business to buy things, but I was sold on some of their applications that we could use. And since then, we have Ben Young, who's our information systems and public policy analyst, was able to show me and open my eyes as to what the real potential in using this particular software. And it goes to really transforming the city into a digital platform. And I wish I could say that all government everywhere had it together like this, but they don't. I'm glad that we now are, but we were part of that. And what it goes to say is that none of this can happen without competent, adequate staff. Can't do it. Can't do it. I don't know that, I am not that person. I'm not technologically inclined. I understand the value of it, but I don't understand how to make it work. But we have to have people on board that know how to make it work. And we have that. And so I can't underestimate the value that Ben and the team of other young people at the city have put into this project to bring it forward. So the city has a new citizen service portal, and you can see the address is northcantonohio.viewpointcloud.com. And residents can use this portal to apply for permits. You remember, I know Stephanie does, 5-6 years ago, when Member Soretta was part of this group, we talked with the trades folks, and they were so frustrated that every single thing they had to get had to make a trip to City Hall. So inefficient. Started that drive towards pushing in that direction, but we didn't have software and we didn't have the people. Now we have them both, and so now we are digitizing and onlining that whole experience for getting permits. You can also do your register, your rentals and your vacant properties, apply for civil service jobs, and more. Currently, we offer 21 online services. 2 years ago, none. So we're making great progress. And by January 1, 2024, our goal is to have 32 more added to this list. The platform enables communication and automated approvals across all city departments. Now I want to give you a case study where this just took place. So what I found in my role is looking at how government operates and trying to figure out if it's operating efficiently and effectively. And in the case of getting new water service, let's look at all the different people that touch this subject. Administration, engineering, water distribution, water treatment plant, utility, billing. There's 6 departments.
And permits.
Permits, 7 departments that touch this. Well, what happens if somebody wants water and they call the head of water distribution because he's been here a long time? Or what if it starts out in utilities? What happens is that not all the other 6 departments are plugged into the process, and it creates gaps in information that can lead to mistakes, errors being made, slow service, non-responsiveness. So we put together a representative from every one of these departments, and for the last 6 months or so, we've been working through what should this process look like from start to finish. From the time either the phone rings or somebody goes now online to apply for water service. So I know it's hard to read. I'm going to read it down for you, though. So it starts out with an initial review. And along the way, as these steps are completed, email notifications go to other departments to let them know where we are. So after the initial review, it goes to engineering. Engineering has to review this and sign off on it. Then it goes to water distribution. Then it goes to the administration. And all these can be happening concurrently. Because when the initial review starts, we're all getting a notice. Hey, somebody wants water service at this address. Okay, so engineering, water distribution, administration look at it, and all 3 of us have to agree in order for us to move to the next step. So it has to be signed off by me, the engineer, and the superintendent of water distribution. And then it comes to a water service agreement. Agreement is signed and executed. Then, at that time, it goes to back over to permits, and there's connection fees that are calculated. People are going to know right on the spot what they are. We confirmed that they have signed the water agreement. We have a receipt for that. Then plans are submitted, they're reviewed. We also note, and as you go through this online process, in each of these steps, you're filling out like an application. So let's say a residence wants water service. And one of the questions that will be in there is, do you intend to have a lawn sprinkler system? And if they answer yes, now that's going to trigger questions about backflow, because you're required by us to have a backflow device to protect our water supply. So that will go down to the water treatment plant. So there's another department that's involved, and they review the backflow prevention plan. And then you can see it goes through water connection permit, a tap's installed, connection to the service lines that have to be inspected, there's pressure testing, meter installation, confirmation of the backflow, and then a final review closeout. It sounds like it's a long, complicated process. It's not, because it's happening concurrently. Everybody's being notified at the appropriate stage where they have to do something to move the process forward. And then there's mechanisms built in that if something is open too long, where are we at on this? Why is this stuck at water service agreement receipt? Well, we've never received a signed copy back. Okay, well then maybe somebody ought to follow up with it. Did they change their mind? Or did they, what happened here along the process? So these things are built into that to tickle us, to prompt to do some action. So, as you recall, on May 22nd, you passed City Ordinance 44/2023 that lowered connection fees and authorized changes to the city's new water service procedures. New water requests require approval or action from 7 city departments across 22 process steps. Software links all the departments and the personnel together in a digital semi-automated workflow. And we completed this process and went live on the city's website June 22nd, the day the ordinance took effect. That's pretty powerful stuff. So you go to northcantonohio.gov/I-want-water. Great name. So we've, while this is going on, I'm going to point out to you something that occurred, that we know that there are times when developers develop whole subdivisions, and they'll come in and apply for water permits and service, and they install their water lines, and they hook them up to every one of these parcels. And the hope of the developer is that he sells the parcels and people build a home on it that he builds. But sometimes that can take a long time. You all know the sanctuary took decades to sell all the lots in that initial phase. It depends what's happening in the economy. And so if interest rates are high, it might not result in a lot of sales. So what we noticed is that there were some places out there that had installed water lines to what would be a curb box. And the process from there should have been that when the home was built and the water line was being put into the curb box into the home, the city should have been notified of that. And we found some instances where that didn't occur. And through this process, we were able to address this possibility that in these subdivisions that are being constructed outside the city, mind you, mostly, that if someone gets permits and the lines are put into the curb box, that every so many 90 days we should be following up, where are we in physical inspections to see if homes have been put under construction. Because what it leads to is homes being connected to our service and nobody knowing it, and then being able to, in essence, get water without having to pay for it. So we have identified a couple of those, we've acted upon those, closed those situations down, and we're able to get those folks in under water service agreements and have put others on notice that should these lots be sold, that we are now more than able to understand what's happening and whether or not the water is going to be obtained from the city. So it's not an inconsequential lift, and it led us to something that we would not have normally really uncovered, because there are people out there who either intentionally or unintentionally didn't know what was happening, and as a result, we missed out on some customers that we've now caught up on. So before I go to the next subject, which is a different subject, I'd allow for any questions or concerns or comments on so far what we're doing. And our intent is to get the idea of how much thought is going through in developing a process that didn't exist before on paper, let alone have it be automated, and it was just subject to what somebody could remember, and when those people retire, it's gone. It's gone. So this fits into Catherine's succession planning that she's been doing in HR, making sure that there's someone there in the event that number one is away on vacation or that they retire, that there's somebody that can step into it, and that they don't have to remember everything. It's digitized for them to do. Okay.
Patrick?
Yes.
Just for a second, I think this really underscores, and I can say this given my advanced years, but there's a general risk that we have in a community when it is managed by people who are old. And I think this demonstrates the value of building a team that is comprised of younger individuals who, to your point, have technical savvy. Because clearly, this wasn't going to come from council. You weren't going to do it. I wasn't going to do it. But this younger team, individuals who've been trained, for example, in data analytics, are able to take our off-the-shelf software, manipulate it, and create more efficient government for the taxpayer.
Yeah, and particularly on this, I mean, OpenGov provides you with a blueprint of what you can do. They're not building this. Ben's building this.
That's correct. And I think the other element is that we've touched on this, is that it's critical that we have a hiring process that can identify and hire talent, and we come up with a strategy then to retain it. Because all this can go away if you don't have the right people in place.
100% correct, Daryl, and I think the word you're searching for too is diversity in our staff, because while the young and technical are great, we respect those of the advanced ages, because sitting around the table in this room with the superintendent from the water distribution department with 42 years of service, he can provide knowledge and information that the technical side, the younger side, doesn't know. But when you marry those two together, that's how these things happen. It's beautiful.
But I think the other thing is this, it really speaks to, it speaks to this whole notion of managing the organization at the end of the day. It's more than coming and turning on the lights.
A lot more.
Identify problems, work the solution, embrace technology, and don't be afraid of it. And I'm sure you would tell me is, I'm sure Ben would, that I'm sure it probably hasn't been cheap. There is some cost, personnel and software, etc., and time, but this is what you get.
We gathered everybody around the table, every department.
Managed through human resources.
Yep, and managed everybody and came to the solution.
Okay.
I think you hit on the 2 Ps that Mr. DiOrio speaks about, people and process.
The 4 Ps.
4.
There's
Policy,
2.
process, people, pay for it.
This is the people and the process.
Yeah.
We had a policy on it.
You guys set the policy, but we gotta have the process, people, and then pay for it.
But, you know, but it also speaks, and when we talked about it in terms of our economic development, it also talks about that, you know, there's a great deal of forethought that goes into this. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes conversations that occur outside of this council chamber to get us to this point. And again, we have a checklist for economic development. You've got your 3 Ps on this kind of stuff, or 4 Ps, excuse me, 4 Ps. I'm spelling funding with a PF. But the point is that that's how it works.
Okay, the next piece, don't, you know, hold on to your seat, don't be shocked. You should be shocked. So this is gonna be a case study on rental registration. So there's some pictures that we've accumulated from some of the places that we've been into. All right? And you probably, when we started this journey a couple years ago, you would probably say, not in North Canton. I'm telling you, it's a lot more widespread than you think. Slide. And it really, when you look at this, you know, you find yourself in a position where, you know, it just takes your breath away how appalling some apartments have become, some single-family homes have become on the inside. And you really can't find an explanation for why. It just is. And you know, I just had one of our inspectors come back last week and tell me that he went in, checked out a place, had to turn around and get back out before he threw up, because when he was in the checking life safety equipment and things in the bedroom, the bed, when he looked at the bed, the entire surface of the bed seemed to be moving in some sort of 3D picture kind of thing. And what is the result then that happens? Well, in cases where we see things like that, you know, we contact the Stark County Health Department, or if we happen to see, you know, mice, feces, or cockroaches and things like that. That's what we're required to do. We turn that into the health department. The health department runs point on that. Ultimately, whether it's the health department notifying the landlord or we're notifying the landlord of life safety violations, the landlords are, you know, almost to everyone have said, you know, they haven't been in these apartments for years. They had no idea what was happening. And we've had some that have said, quite frankly, they don't care. They don't really care if it looks like that. They just want to make sure the check comes on time. That's all they care about. So you know what you're getting. So as you know, we've tried to make this easier. It's been a journey, a learning process along the way, but we did enable this to be done online. So far, more than 1,400 units have registered to date. Keep in mind that these are buildings that are 8 units or fewer. That represents about 18.5% of the city's housing. In the fall, when you come back from break, you are going to be at some point presented with ordinance per your request to address the buildings that are 9 and up. We estimate that there are about 1,400 units in those larger properties. So if you add the two together, you're seeing that you're right around close to that 40% number that we know of. And every day we have people that through their own goodwill care about their community, see a sign get posted for rent. They send us an email or a text or a phone call and say, hey, what, you know that this address is registered, and we check them out, and In some cases, they weren't, we didn't know. And so now we put them on notice because we're relying initially on the information that came from the county. It's not exactly all accurate, but we've been able to fine tune that. So, 40%, that's a lot of properties that are rentals. 75% of the units inspected have had violations that require a re-inspection. So it wasn't, you come in and it's a one and done, oh, you're really keeping it up pretty good, there's really no need for us to come back and get your license. You got problems, there's things you gotta fix. One, I probably said this once before, but it bears repeating again. Some of these changes are not of our doing. The state of Ohio has an Ohio Building and Standards Board that governs commercial construction. And they have their own standards that everybody in Ohio is bound by. And one of those that has come to that board in recent years has been that the valves on the natural gas lines that go to the water heater in most buildings are an old ball valve. So it's supposed to be that pressure pushes a ball into the opening of the pipe and blocks it. But over time, these things have been found to not seal tightly as the decades go on. And what that means is that natural gas would then leak into the building, causing potential harm or damage. So the Ohio Building Board said those have to be switched to the new kinds of valves that prevent that from happening. Every one of those, that's a citation. Almost all the buildings are that. So it's not an expensive fix. It's not like somebody jumps up and down with open arms and says, oh, thank you for pointing that out to us. Hey, I'm sorry, but these are the codes, not our code. But we prescribe or subscribe to the Ohio Building Board's standards. So, before we move to I do want to comment. I saw something the other day that made, I was watching in some other context besides thinking about the city of North Canton, but I couldn't help but come back to the city of North Canton in relation to housing. And it kind of, in a way, summed up, part of the challenges that we have here. So when we talk about it, again, this was in the context of a different object, so I've substituted this, but what is the function of a house? It's the function to keep you safe, keep you warm, provide a place for you to raise a family, maybe live close to work. Those are all different functions of a house. But why would someone pay more for a house that provides the same function? So I can buy this house that you see on your screen. It can provide me all that. Or I can buy a house down the street that's well maintained, that's well kept. Why would I want to do that? Well, some people are looking for quality. I'm talking about our community. They're looking for North Canton. They're looking for quality. And people that are looking for quality, they expect something different. They take better care of it. Because they take better care of it, it lasts longer. And all those things make a better city, and it makes it better on city government, and requires less of a burden because people are doing the things that they're supposed to do. So we don't buy things based on function. We buy maybe because we want a better future. We buy status symbols. We buy ego appeal. We buy for different things. So it's not about changing what you sell, but who you are selling to. So who are we marketing this city to? Are we marketing this city to the 40%? Rental properties and climbing so that we can have more of this? We want to sell to individuals that want to have the North Canton experience, who will cherish it, who will enhance it, who will build upon it, who will preserve their prosperity, their home. That will do more to ensure the prosperity of North Canton well into the future. And we have passed the torch to the next generation more than anything that we can do here in passing any other ordinance. It's setting up, selling the North Canton experience to people that want that. If we don't actively do that and manage that expectation and manage that vision where we're trying to go, we will lose control. And it's harder to control the higher the percentage we reach in the rentals, because clearly, you know, the interest is not in what the property looks like from outside or within. It's about getting their check. And that is not what we're about. Next. So technology for North Canton's second century. And this is part of the master plan. We wanted this technology for the second century. New digital processes reduce the administrative time and costs for the city, but allow residents to apply for service without needing to physically visit City Hall. Processes ensure everyone who needs to review and approve the information can, and that the approvals are tracked. We know where it stops. The software provides the city with valuable data that can be used in the aggregate with other city information to track trends, identify problems, and generate solutions. And the back screen that you have on here, which is of a particular property, that 59 EMS calls were made, 35 nature unknown, 17 disturbance, a whole bunch of reasons. And these are reasons that affect who you're selling to and who wants to come to this community. So we appreciate all the stuff that Ben and his staff, Jenny and Jennifer and all the others that worked on this to make this all possible. And we're not done here. This isn't rest on our laurels or take a break here. It's on to the next thing. Ben has 32 more to try to get online before January 1st. And we have more that will follow, and you get the idea of what we're trying to go. So I'm sorry I went on longer than I probably should have or expected, but it is very important. I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, you can.
Just, thinking back on conversation in this very room, I was struck by how often we were told that rental registration wasn't necessary. We had outsiders parachuting in. Our email boxes were filling, but people said, we don't need this. It's unfair to landlords. And what have we discovered? Properties are unsafe. They don't need code. We have many landlords that aren't compliant with our income tax requirements. I think the thing that concerns me most is that we've got pretty close to 40% of rental. You're about 10 points away from the tipping point. Generally speaking, when you hit 50, your community may begin to experience fairly serious issues. So we're 10 points out. I think why this is important is that, go back to the 4 Ps. If you're going to make policy, you got to have data. And you can't have data without the people to do it, to assemble it, to get it to you for decisions. I would argue that, all of this stuff that we've talked about tonight is pretty well linked up. You can't address rental registration, you can't address the issues that come from 40% rental without revenue. You have to have economic development, you have to have redevelopment. You need that stuff. But I think the biggest challenge this community has going forward is going to be this rental issue and the strategies for redevelopment. That's gonna be the challenge. Can we get there? I don't know. Not gonna be on my watch. But it's gonna take some really talented folks to come up with that policy, or those policies, whatever they look like, to see if we can avoid the big problems. And, well, you know, we tend to think we're pretty special, we're unique. But the reality is, in many ways, North Canton's no different than any other community. Others have gone down this path. The destination is yet to be determined.
And if I could add to that, I think I mentioned to you in a, observation I felt, in private conversation with you, but bear repeating here, but, I feel that the journey from 0 to 40%, or however, wherever it started, what number that was, and got up to 40, has taken a long period of time to get there, right? Because, when we had some folks in here from the near northeast side talking about, I've lived in my house for 60 years, I've been in my house for 50 years, and all that. 25 years ago, right, these people were just kind of midway through that journey. But as we move through that and more of us, depart this earth, and those properties then become available, those, people that maybe in their 80s or 90s and have kids in their 60s and 70s, they don't live around here. And they're not really interested in moving back and moving into the home that they grew up in 60 years ago. And so what happens to those? They get sold, and they get flipped, or they turn into rental properties, or whatever the situation is. My point is that the pace isn't the same to go from 40 to 50 as it was from 0 to 40. We're in the quickening part. We'll go faster from 40 to 50 to 60 than it took us to go from 0 to 40, because the people who are there are passing on now, and so it's going to expand and accelerate that process. And then as the people who are left here have bad experiences because the rental properties are all around them, and they're not being properly taken care of, that encourages them then too to say, I can't take it anymore, and they put their house up for sale, and the next thing you know, you're in some really high percentages, and it's almost impossible to get it back.
Well, to your point is, the other element that drives it is, and I would agree with you, it's that spiral begins to quicken as time passes, and particularly as a function of the aging of your housing stock and the amenities in the house, and what people expect to have in homes. And I think that's the other complementary factor to it. But, we've got neighborhoods, in your ward, it's almost 30% on any given street. The areas that we're in the other night, on the master plan, I think they're at 22, 24% on just one of the streets alone. So they're halfway there now, to your point. And as that old group dies off, the question is, who's going to be in that house? Is it going to be owner occupied, or is it going to be a rental? And if it's a rental, is it going to be like what we see here? And what does that do for the rest of your community?
So to that point, then, as I look at this and these 1,400 estimated units that are going to be coming online, that ordinance, should you pass it, we'll do similar to what we did with the other one, go in effect January 1st, encourage people to sign up early, and then give them a grace period through the first couple months of the year to kind of get going. But I am going to be putting into the budget to allocate for an additional employee through Safe Build to be able to handle these rental inspections on those units. Because at the same time that that's happening, we're going to have individuals that have had a 6-month license, a 12-month license, that are going to be coming up for renewal and reinspection, and we can't get in the point where we are delaying services for what people are expecting us to deliver.
I think with these 1,400, I think it's gonna be bad. Quite a,
The new 1400.
the new 1400 is gonna be worse than what we've seen. Unfortunately. At least in my ward.
I would agree with you in your ward.
All right, any other comments? Thank you,
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
great
you.
job.
Great
Good
job.
information.
Staff.
Ben,
Yeah.
great job.
Okay, moving on to recognition of public. At this time, members of the public wishing to address council may do so. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes. Comments shall be limited to legislative items appearing on tonight's agenda only. The rules for speaking and the speaker's time will appear on both screens. This will serve as the only warning for everyone in attendance. Any violation will result in ejection from the premises. Anyone wishing to address council, please approach the podium.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast North Canton, Ohio. I want to finish my remarks regarding ordinance number 32, 2023, the off-street parking. The last part of your ordinance here also mentions illumination in open areas. Do we really need to have lighting in these empty parking lots all night long? Why don't we restrict 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever time the parking lot is no longer utilized? As Mr. Revolt acknowledged to me here about 1.5 years ago, and others here on council, we have lighting problems throughout this city. I think Mr. Revolt drove through my neighborhood 1 year or so ago. He didn't come in like I had asked, and that was his observation. You have a lot of light issues in your area. And given that we're cutting down trees left and right, there's nothing to shield homeowners from all this obtrusive lighting. So there should be something written in there or added to our code to say these lights need to be either reduced or out when there is no, when the public is not even utilizing the parking lot. Regarding Mr. Revolt's derogatory statements about this article that I handed out from CNN, it's just simply a collection of cities that have been reported who have been adversely impacted by drive-thrus. So to disparage their reporting as suspect or poorly researched, it's just a collection of communities, leaders throughout the United States who are having issues with drive-thrus and are now putting a delay on approval of more drive-thrus in their communities. And of course, with drive-thrus, you have more traffic, more curb cuts, more opportunities for accidents. So I don't think that criticism of this CNN reporter was on the mark. Thank you.
The article's garbage. Stand up here and present this as if it's some sort of definitive opinion regarding our situation here in North Canton is a falsehood. Chuck, if you read this carefully, the people who were quoted are advocates of mass transportation. They are developing entire neighborhoods. If you had bothered to Google them, you would see it, which I just did. Moreover, as one of the sources says, these drive-thrus are intentionally placed on higher speed arterial roads, busy roads that carry cars at high speeds. That is not the situation here in North Canton. So to pretend that this is us is intellectually dishonest. It's your, Chuck, You stand up here and you present this as some sort of expert opinion, when the fact of the matter is, it's not. The fact is, you didn't do your homework. You stood up here on multiple occasions over the last 18 months, belittled people in this room who have actually produced really wonderful things. Give you a perfect example, lighting. One of the reasons these places are lit is because there are people in them after dark. After the stores close, the parking lots are lit for a reason. They have maintenance, snow removal. Why wouldn't we want safety for the people who are working after hours? Incomplete and unthoughtful. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council tonight?
I had a question, so.
Well, please approach the podium.
Hi, my name's Joseph Volpe. I live at 716 Park Avenue, Canton. And so do I just, tonight I'm only allowed to speak about like the thing Errol brought up about businesses not being required to use all this parking space? That's kind of not making the city any money on tax revenue wise, and just that and whatever's on this page.
Yeah, anything on the agenda. Yep.
Hey, I just want to say, I think it's a good idea what Mr. Revolt brought up. I think these, spaces in, the Acme parking lot, you could put a little quote-unquote safe spot, skate spot there if the city doesn't plan on repurposing Dogwood for a new skate park. And I don't know, there's a bunch of restaurants there, and, might be a good new spot for that, but I just think it's a good idea, for businesses not having to be required to have all these parking spaces that they're not using, because obviously it's not making, it's not creating any jobs, and it's not bringing any tax revenue for the city, and, we're always gonna need, tax revenue to not be bankrupt or anything, so. I don't think it's a bad thing for the city. I think it's good and, helps create new business, and, we need every job we can get here, to keep, we're getting going. And it's about to be, 8 more years, and we're gonna be celebrating our 200th year birthday for the city, so, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address council tonight? Roll call. Okay, moving on to old business. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 50-2023?
An ordinance authorizing the vacation of a portion of alley number 47 from the north right-of-way of Rose Lane Street Southeast to the south line of lots 3926 and 3936, parcel numbers 920-8422 and 920-8423 in the city of North Canton, Stark County, Ohio.
Okay, this is Street and Alley, and this is my committee. So this is Lindy Lane, the alley by North Canton Collision. There's nothing new on this matter.
Motion to adopt?
I would like that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 52-2023?
51.
51, sorry, skipped right over that.
An ordinance repealing and replacing the sanitary sewer regulations of the city of North Canton, specifically chapters 921, 923, and 925 of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton in order to simplify and clarify regulations of sanitary sewer services within the corporate boundaries of the city of North Canton.
All right, utilities, Jamie.
And I know why you tried to skip over this one. You thought that utilities has had too much discussion this evening.
Too much
So
time tonight.
these are just relatively quick ones to go over. This is the third reading. We've discussed it. This is just updating the regulations for our sanitary sewer regulations within the city. So,
Jamie, that accusation was rubbish.
I move to adopt.
All right, yeah, I was gonna say, I'm looking for a motion,
Let's
so
go.
you're gonna move, I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 52-2023?
An ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 929 Storm Sewers of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton.
Jamie again?
All right, just like we looked at the other item in regards to sanitary sewers, this is in regards to storm sewers and updating the regulations of such. So again, nothing new since our last reading. This is the third reading. If there's no questions or comments, I would move that we adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 56-2023?
An ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 907 Street Excavations of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton.
Okay, the street and alley, this is me. This is street excavations. There's nothing new on this either. Any comments, questions for anyone?
To adopt.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of 60-2023?
An ordinance repealing and replacing City Ordinance Number 01-2018, quote, an ordinance repealing and replacing ordinances 105-78, 3581-75, and 3544-75, prohibiting at all times right turns on red at certain intersections regulated by traffic control signals, and prohibiting right turns on red between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday at certain intersections regulated by traffic control signals, and declaring the same to be an emergency, end quote, in order to improve the city's traffic patterns.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Okay, we did update this a couple times, so we limited the turn on Everhard, and we limited the turn on 7th. Other than that, nothing has changed. Any questions, comments?
Motion to adopt?
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 30-2023?
An ordinance amending Chapter 1136, Main Street Districts, specifically Section 1136.05, Schedule of Uses, Item, Multi-Unit Dwelling, of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton to permit multi-unit dwellings on ground floors when a property does not have frontage on Main Street or another important road in the city as designated by council.
Okay, community and economic development there.
This was discussed at length at the public hearing. I move the adoption of 30-23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 32-2023?
An ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 1153 of the replacing 1153 off-street parking of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton.
Okay, Daryl.
Again, this has been discussed at length. I move adoption of ordinance 32-23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of 38-2023?
An ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 1107 subdivision regulations of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton.
Okay, we discussed this at length. There's nothing new on this either. I move that we adopt.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend Council Rule 23 to allow for consideration of items 4A, 4B, 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D, 5E from the preceding committee meeting?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of what is now ordinance 62-2023?
An ordinance repealing subsection 148.02B of Chapter 148 Property Maintenance Review Board of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton in order to reflect the structure of charter established boards and to prevent legal conflicts of interest, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Okay, John, ordinance and rules.
Yeah, Ben explained that rather good for us in the committee of the whole meeting, so I would have moved to put it on the, well, to move to be an emergency first.
Move to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Revolt will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
1 second, sorry.
Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 62-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of what is now ordinance 63-2023?
An ordinance amending Chapter 105 Ohio Fire Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton.
15,
What did I say?
105.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Chapter 1501 Ohio Fire Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton, specifically Section 1501.01 adoption in order to reflect the most current version of the Ohio Fire Code and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Again, we discussed this in the committee of the whole meeting, so I would make a motion.
To adopt.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 63-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of what is now ordinance 64-2023?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of North Canton to prepare and submit an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for a grant for the Woodrow/Lois Waterline Replacement Project, and, if awarded, authorizing the mayor, upon Board of Control approval, to enter into an agreement for the receipt of said grant and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Jamie?
All right, we discussed this in the committee meeting. Nothing new to add, obviously, so with that said, I would move that we adopt.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 64-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Ben, would you please read the title of what is now ordinance 65-2023?
I think we're on 66.
66.
66?
We're on 65.
No,
Yeah,
65.
The Arrowhead Water Well.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of North Canton to prepare and submit an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for a grant for the Arrowhead Water Well project, and, if awarded, authorizing the mayor, upon Board of Control approval, to enter into an agreement for the receipt of said grant and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Jamie?
All right, just like the other one, nothing new to add. We discussed this in committee. So I would move that we adopt.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 65-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on. Ben, would you please read the title of what is now ordinance 66-2023?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of North Canton to enter into an agreement with the Stark County Commissioners for the replacement of city water lines as part of the county's Everhard/Dressler Road intersection project and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Jamie again.
All right, just like the others, nothing has changed since the committee meeting, so I would move that we adopt ordinance 66-2023.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 66-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's set that in my throat. Ben, would you please read the title of what is now ordinance 67-2023?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton to enter into an agreement with the Stark County Commissioners for the use of community development block grant funds on the Peachtree Neighborhood Waterline Replacement Project and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Jamie?
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, nothing has changed since we've discussed this a few moments ago, so unless anybody else has anything else to say, I move that we adopt
Revolt
ordinance
seconds.
67, 2023.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Revolt moves.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 67-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of what is now ordinance 68-2023?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor, upon Board of Control approval, to enter into a contract for the cleaning of the sludge lagoons at the North Canton Drinking Water Treatment Plant and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Jamie, let's talk about sludge.
All right, and this is the last one of the utilities ordinances here this evening. Nothing new has changed since the discussion earlier, so I move that we adopt.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to adopt the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Revolt
I
moves.
believe you mean suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules.
Sorry, yeah.
Move
Can I
to suspend.
Yes, suspend.
Second.
You get a second on that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 68-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to department reports. Let's start with Patrick, Director of Administration.
Okay, I will just remind you that pursuant to city charter, the mayor may call a meeting of the city council upon providing proper notice. I know that we will be going on break on July 10th, but should there be something that would develop over that break that requires the council's immediate attention, the mayor does have the right to call for a council meeting. I want to just let you know, as a follow-up to something that we haven't talked about for a little bit, and that is the dogwood pool, and that the city has engaged a consultant whose expertise is swimming pools, municipalities and other large outdoor pools. And we invited them in to address the issues of the dogwood pool liner itself and give us a recommendation. I expect that to be delivered to us before the end of the month, after which time we will be bringing to City Council our analysis of the consultant's report. As you know, that the pool liner has been failing in the last 3 years, each year progressively worse. So we're going to take a look and see what they're recommending be done. The entity that we are engaging with is not the entity that sold us the liner. At this time, though, until I have such report in my hand and can analyze what it is saying, I am going to withhold sending out for bid, advertising for bids on the Dogwood Pool House project. I don't think it would be prudent to submit that out and have, entities work hard at getting that turned back in without us knowing what that report says. So I think council is going to need more information before we can move forward with that. So look for that to happen, hopefully by the end of this week. And I'll be in touch with you on that. That was not one of the items that I was thinking of when I mentioned about the mayor calling me. But that concludes my report.
Catherine?
I don't have a report. If you have any questions for me tonight, you can answer. I mean, Patrick covered it on the parks. I would just say on the people side, if I can, say one thing. I don't want to jump ahead for you, Ben, but let's say thank you to Ginny for her time here. You may or may not know she's moving on. We have been actively recruiting her replacement. We've had some good interviews. In fact, we have a solid second interview this week, so we're hopefully going to have her backfill pretty quick here. And she's moving on to bigger and better things, and we thank you for the time. She mentioned tonight that her first meeting was a triple header, and her last meeting was a triple header. So she came in and just going out in style. We're actively recruiting and looking for, and kind of in the final stage for a water treatment operator. We have some police and fire positions, and of course her policy AA position. And recently, I did get the opportunity to attend a National Society of Human Resource Management conference, which took along Kelly Hart from the city, who has recently received her specialization in human resource management. So we're keeping very abreast of all the ever-changing employment laws and regulations that follow to keep the city compliant from the human management side. So that's all I have, unless anyone has any questions for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's go with Mayor.
Thank you, President Story, and thank you for sharing that information again about keeping our city compliant with our HR qualification. Jenny Greer, again, thank you for your time with us. I wish you the best in your next phase for you're a very community-oriented service type of person, so we're going to miss you. Thank you for bringing your talent to our city administration. Just no particular order. We have two new businesses that are coming back into town, coming into town. Warner Family Insurance, they're going to take up a location at 822 South Main Street. It's the building just south of the Burris Jewelers right there. So they're bringing their insurance company in. Also, I had the opportunity for the ribbon cutting at 210 Apple Grove. That was the Ohio Catholic Federal Credit Union. They're very excited to be here in North Canton. Something that a little out of the ordinary, I had the opportunity to attend the Great Lakes Regional Baton Twirling Championships. And that was held at North Canton Hoover High School. And there was over 200 participants, young girls from the youngest age you could imagine to the senior status, college educated or college level, and had an opportunity to meet several head twirlers one from Michigan, one who's going to be at Miami of Ohio, Miami University of Ohio, and a couple high school young ladies who are going to be their head cheerleaders. And it was a pleasure to meet with them. They came to our city from Ohio, Maryland, West Virginia, and Illinois. And so we had quite and they were here for 2 days, staying in the hotels near us. And the one favorite comment I received was when we told them about paths, they made sure they hit paths on the way home. And I got an email from a mother saying that the banana cream ice cream was the best. So there you go, shopping in our city from out of state. You know, much has been discussed tonight. I want to thank council for approving on emergency the amendments that came before you so that we can go forward and start securing some grants for our major projects that we have coming up. I want to thank you very much for pursuing that. And Patrick, again, and thank you for the presentation and the overview of the digitization of our city services. And most of all, I want to thank our team that we've assembled here, not only in the city administration, but our city department heads, because our team knows how to change and adapt based on our situation. And
changes is always going to be current. And I know we've been going for about the last 2.5 years through some changes for the city. But it's all with a goal in mind, to make our city better and sustainable now and for the future. And part of that goes right along with, as Ms. mentioned before, the second century that we're experiencing with our 2023 master plan, that we're looking at not only at 5, 10, but even could be 20 years from now, based on what was assembled here and we approved not too long ago. And with that, it goes to, I look at our team that has been assembled here, folks. Their energy is not fighting the old, okay? We've learned from the past. We recognize the history that has been North Canton. But our energy, I think, is not fighting the old, but on building the new. And that's what our team is working on right now. Adapting to changes and how to make our community stronger and have and strengthening the North Canton identity. I think that was presented in the program that Patrick presented today. How do we strengthen that identity? So my comments on that, again, is I'm very thankful to be a part of this team that we've assembled and bring in the talents that we have, old and new, and the experiences and knowledge that we have. So it's all about continuous improvement, and that's what I think we're doing here as we conduct business on Monday nights. So thank you very much. My compliments to our team that has been working very hard on improving our city in a number of ways that I think that maybe we didn't imagine could happen. So thank you very much for that time.
All right. Banana cream is my second favorite from Pat's. Baklava is my favorite.
You know what I'm talking about.
It is good. Ben?
So first, I spent most of this morning and a good deal this afternoon on civil service promotional exams for the fire department. Thankfully, they were all completed successfully, and pending any challenges, everybody passed. So we have some candidates for promotion should we need them. And then second, yes, of course, Catherine did steal my thunder.
Sorry.
It is Ginny's last meeting here with us, and we are sorry to see Ginny go, but wish her the best of luck down in Florida, where if it snows at all, they completely stop.
All right. Let's go on to council reports. Jamie.
All right. I guess first and foremost, I would like to wish Ginny much success. I've been sitting here trying to think for the past couple minutes how I could work in a LeBron James joke about you taking your talents to South Beach, but I don't even know if you're moving to South Beach, but you're going to Florida nonetheless. I wish you, all the success, and thank you for your time here in North Canton. Patrick, thank you for your presentation. I certainly embrace technology myself, the Apple Watch and multiple phones, but there are times where I don't embrace technology, and I guess I hearken back to the Joe Walsh song, Analog Man. But I tell you what, the system is easy to use. I did get my fire permit online earlier this year, and I think hearing, as you described, a lot of the permits that some of the tradespeople would have to get used to have to come in building. It just makes it so much easier for these people. And then rental registration, just to hear what's been accomplished with the modernization of our systems, and it just blows me away. So thank you for sharing what you shared. So really don't have anything else this evening, and that's it.
All right. Thank you. David.
Okay, so as Chairman of Personnel and Safety, since I had nothing on the agenda, I think I deserve to speak for, what, 30 minutes?
No,
Go for it.
no.
At least as long as we talked about water, sewer,
Health and wellness, no.
Actually, Ms. Greer, good luck, and thank you for what you've done to the city. Our loss is their gain. We do have a new addition to the North Canton Police Department, Jacqueline Halmassey?
Helmsy.
Helmassey.
Yes, sir.
Jaqueline.
So close. She is a new appointed part-time dispatcher for our police department. So welcome, Jacqueline. And then we have the fire department. Patrick Klein is a new full-time firefighter and paramedic that has been added to the team. So we continue to add great people in our HR department. The number one asset is our people. So keep hiring these great people, keep making the city better for our residents. That's my report.
Thank you, Dave. Stephanie.
I love that you're doing AmeriCorps. My sister did it, and the things she learned and gained, you can take wherever you need to go. And I always love seeing people go, learn, and then if you want to come back, come back. So I love that choice, even though we'll miss you. And when thinking about the technology, I do a lot with Maslow's hierarchy, and you talk about those basic needs, and that's what you're talking about, Patrick. The basic needs of the city, and you will never get to the growth level without looking at those basic needs and giving the individual those things that they need on a daily basis to move their business, which is our city business, and all those different avenues you talked about in a more productive, efficient way. So it's amazing, and I think we will see tremendous growth from it. So thanks. That's it. Oh, and I loved the development with Catherine and Kelly going to the conference. So important. You cannot develop people, and it's one of the reasons people leave their jobs. So thank you.
How often was it done before?
Thank you, Stephanie. John.
Okay, Jenny, thank you for all you've done, and best of luck. Pat, I'd like to say a big thank you for that alley behind Crow's Nest. We did it. It looks great. Keep up the good work there. Now, for the last 2 weeks, I've had a 3-year-old at the house. Yes. So we went over to the park, Dogwood.
Oh.
And as my wife's playing the one night with her on that stuff, I'm sitting around and I'm talking to a lot of people there. So I said, well, maybe I'll take a poll. How many are actually from North Canton? The first night, only 25%. The second night, closer to 50%. And then the third time we went on a Saturday, and they had rented out Dogwood. It was for a Glen Oak celebration, so we had some partial North Cantonians and stuff. So that that park is a great park, but we've got to do something with the middle school aged kids. They're on the smaller kids stuff, and some adults, without children, are on that stuff. And I said something to one adult. I go, "You have any children here?" "Oh no, I like coming down here." And he's on a little ride for a 2 or 3-year-old. No, I didn't go for that. And yeah, there was other issues.
There are signs there that do say the ages.
Yeah, but
and
no
we're
one
controlling it a little bit more now. We
Yeah.
have our police officers, and if they seem like they're being a little bit too aggressive on the equipment, we are definitely pointing to the signs.
Good.
And saying,
And then the other positive thing, I saw a lot of kids pick up pieces of paper and stuff and threw them away. And you can't teach that. They were probably the North Canton kids, but they were picking it up, and the bathrooms were clean and everything. So great job. Other than that, no report.
All right. Thank you, John. Daryl.
Jenny, good luck. Hope you carry with you our best wishes, and we're confident in your new gig you'll enjoy great success.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
That's it.
All right. Christina.
Jenny. You're like just a total delight and so inspiring, and I truly can't wait to watch you go and change the world wherever you end up. I appreciate you, and we'll miss you. Patrick, thanks for the wonderful report. Ben, thanks for doing the work. I'm a big advocate, as I've said many times, of retaining young talent here, and certainly an advocate of retaining all of our talent of all ages, all of our seasoned employees, but the seasoned ones don't seem to get quite the criticism sometimes. So you're awesome, and you know that. And that's all. Oh, Oh, one more thing. You have been putting in the agenda, like, this is another thing you've been doing, kind of like reflecting back on the master plan, and is whatever we're doing compliant with the master plan. And I've been noticing that. It's pretty great. So it's another thing you're doing really well too. That's all.
All right, thank you. Okay, my turn. Ginny, thank you for all your hard work. You're not really replaceable, so that's tough. We'll miss you. I will warn you that North Canton's like a magnet. It draws you back. So that's your fair
Later.
warning. Yeah, later, absolutely. But congratulations. What is that? Oh my gosh, I had something about the park and I just fleeted. Thank you, Ben, Patrick. The technology is great, but again, without the staff and without the want-to attitude, it doesn't matter. So the technology, obviously, very, very important, but the staff is what drives it. So thank you guys. Buy and support local, and Dogwood's awesome. I don't know what I was going to say because I envisioned you playing on the equipment.
Oh, that'd be sitting on the park bench underneath the pavilion.
So you get on the zip line, right?
And I'm looking forward to the 4th of July parade coming up. So we'll do a final call for new business. Okay, seeing none. Moving on to the meeting calendar. July 3rd, no meeting for July 4th holiday. And then on July 10th, we'll have the last regular city council meeting before the summer break. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn.
Thank you.
I don't understand. What does this mean?